Justin Denton, the IT Program Coordinator at Rasmussen College at the Aurora, Naperville campus. And today we're going to be talking about security in general. More terms, more popular term is cybersecurity. And really just making sure that while we're on the holiday season that we're keeping everybody protected and making sure that you've kind of got the proper knowledge and skill sets just to be prepared, so as you progress through the holiday season that you're not going to ultimately run victim of a hacker or identity theft, and also just to make sure that your computer is generally secure. There's quite a few other areas out there that you can run into that may actually cause you to be a fall victim to various attacks. So really the main principle behind today's presentation is just to make sure that that doesn't occur. As you can see, that's me, Justin Denton, also the guy on the camera, and I've been with the IT industry for over 17 years. I've spent my time with Fortune 100 companies as well as financial institutions. I've got a bachelor's in telecommunications management as well as a master's of science in network communications, network and communications management. If you happen to want to get a hold of me, you can reach me through justin.denton@rasmussen.edu, as well as call me at 630-888-3500. That'll put you in touch with the Aurora, Naperville, Rasmussen College campus, and I would be more than happy to speak with you about technology or any other thoughts that you might have. So as we think about computer technology in general, we really need to worry more so about that there's really not an end to the threats. There's really no given solution that's going to make you completely free of concerns of whether your identity is going to be stolen, you're going to end up with a virus. There's ways to mitigate that, and in all reality the technology will evolve over time, but as this technology evolves, there's always someone out there that's looking to exploit any kind of holes they may find. It's kind of, I guess you could say, hard to think in your own mind that someone's out there and they're spending the majority of their time just trying to punch holes into applications, into operating systems, into websites. But really there are. It's almost like a hobby for some just to see if they can find that exploit. And in some instances, when they find it, they don't tell anybody except the manufacturer to let them know that there's an issue. But then on the other hand, there's others that may run into the same instance where they do punch the hole in and they actually take advantage of that exploit and then also advertise it to others that may want to take advantage of it. This concerns in the past, we used to be always concerned about someone stealing our wallet, stealing our credit card information. One of the biggest ways to obtain someone's credit card information was credit card carvings. And if you worked at a retail store and your credit card machines went down, to this day, people still use that old clunky swipe machine to to swipe your card, make an imprint of it, and they give you one copy, and they keep one copy for themselves, but there's usually a carbon in between those, and sometimes those just get pitched in the garbage. The proper thing to do was to tear those up, but in the past, people would go diving through the dumpster, in which kind of terms dumpster diving, and they would go through and they'd actually grab all of those carbons, and it had a complete imprint of all your credit card information on them. The bad thing was, now you just had your credit card stolen, and you really didn't know it. And it kind of falls into the same line of how credit card theft is nowadays, where people are stealing your credit card information, and you really don't know it. You make a transaction on a website, and you personally feel that everything's good, or you go into even a store and you make a transaction, but all that information is digitally captured, and now can be even easier to steal because you don't have to get yourself dirty by jumping into a dumpster. You can have the proper skill set and obtain that information through a database. Some people will lose their laptop, and all that information is collected somewhere digitally, and now instead of stealing maybe a handful of credit card carbons, now you're stealing thousands and thousands of credit card numbers contained within a database or a text file. On top of this, our concern was if someone took your wallet, got your credit cards, got your driver's license, it would be really easy to steal your identity at that point. We were always concerned, never give out your driver's license number, never give out your social security number, but almost today, we give those out at will. Someone may walk up to you and your place of business and ask you for your social security number. They need to look up some personal information about you, and you don't have that much concern about giving it to them anymore. And now that lack of concern has kind of transposed itself over into the internet era, where people can automatically just toss, anytime a website prompts for that type of information, the majority of the people will just plug that in, thinking it's always safe and secure because I've typed it into my web browser. But in all reality, it falls back to there's not really an end to this, because as we go through, there's going to be quite a few different ways that one could actually keep track of this information and watch as you submit it and actually record that for themselves. The whole principle behind this talk today is really not to feel like you're going to be a hermit. It's not to make you feel like you need to hide and never go out and go shopping, go to a internet website, or even just completely shut down your computer and toss it in the garbage. But it's more so just to make sure that we've got the right tips to kind of mitigate and limit the amount of exposure that we personally have while we are out on the internet and even in stores. I go through this presentation quite a bit, and it may be that I talk about this, but I'm probably one of them that I feel enough well received enough that I can go out into an online environment or go out, and I've used these principles long enough that they become almost second nature. So you almost get a little bit of suspicion to you while you're working on a given transaction. What do? You've been victimized. You wake up, you find out that your identity's been stolen, or you wake up and you want to prevent this. You really don't want to become an actual victim of this, because when you've fallen victim to identity theft, the problem is that you can run into a whole ton of issues, and usually you don't find out that you've become a victim until you go out and you've saved up your money, you've got your down payment on that brand new car that you want, you go out to fill the credit app, you give them the down payment, and they come back to you, and the loan officer says, I'm sorry, I can't give you the loan. Your credit's bad. You have a horrible credit score. And that's when you start looking, well, I haven't had much for credit in the first place, and you start looking at your credit report, and they'll say that you've got a delinquent loan here, you've got a missed payment here, and you've got all these credit cards in your name, or you've had past loans in your name, and that's really when you find out that you've fallen victim to an identity theft. My wife, in particular, even ran into this one where it was around Christmas, and it got even worse. Someone actually stole her identity. We didn't know it. And then around Christmas time, they shut down her bank account, which really wasn't cool. So we had limited access to funds even at Christmas time. So then we did some searching. We found out that there was someone that had taken out unemployment in her name. They had taken out loans in her name, had unpaid medical bills in her name, and we've had to spend, and literally something that can happen in a matter of what seems like minutes can take years and years to correct. It literally took us somewhere around 5 to 7 years to get it completely fixed where we don't have that issue anymore. But nowadays, they have a little bit better. This was in the early 2000s, late 90s. They have a little better ability to check that at a credit agency and a bank level. The only problem is it's still only as good as they've implemented. So if the person comes in with all that information, they've got all identity, driver's license, credit information, their pictures the same, and they still can go through, and it doesn't always set a red flag off. Some other things when they go into a digital age, there's tools called packet sniffers. And really what a packet sniffer is something that sits between you and the network that you're on and basically sits out there and watches activity on a given network. Now, when I was in college, I had a roommate that got involved with packet sniffers, and this is before the internet was kind of segregated the way it is now. So we're talking in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, where he's sitting on at our apartment with a packet sniffer on the MediaCom, or not the MediaCom, it was like AT&T's network. The cable company's no longer in business. It's probably one of the reasons why. And would sit out there on the internet and watch all of this unencrypted information go through. It would surprise you back then how much information was unencrypted. And when I say encrypted, it's, you know, like the picture represents on the screen. You type your password in, and in the background, it's basically flip-flopping your password. So when it sends it across to the internet, it doesn't look like what you just typed in. So when it's unencrypted, if I type in my password as Sparky the dog, it's going to send that completely across the internet as Sparky the dog, not, you know, happy, how are you? And even though when it decrypts it, it actually means Sparky the dog. So when people were sending information across that and he was running his packet sniffer, we basically watched all this activity on the internet and these open passwords coming through, usernames, the website they would go to, the username they would enter, when they would enter their password. And we would see all this information. And obviously to test it out, we would occasionally plug in their information and actually see validate what we were seeing was correct. And it would end up showing that it was. Nowadays, more people are concerned about ensuring that the information sent across the internet is encrypted, but that's one of those things that we'll get into where we want to make sure that when you are going to a website that you're making sure that you have the telltale signs that what you're typing in is actually being sent as an encrypted communication so that no one can sit there, a college kid in his dorm room, isn't sitting there watching you type all your information in and send it across the internet. One key thing is if you're not using computer software or hardware to protect you against this, then you're basically just handing your information out. It's kind of the age-old saying when I was a kid and we would leave the refrigerator door open and just leave it open and stand there looking at all the food in there, and we'd stand with the refrigerator door open for 30 minutes deciding what we want. We may grab food out, make it on the counter, and all while we leave the refrigerator door open. And then my mom walks by and slams the refrigerator door closed and pitches $1 out the door. And you wonder, why did you just do that? Well, you just gave our money to the power company, so I'm just going ahead and throwing it out the door for them. It's basically, if you don't have the software or hardware on your system, you're basically just opening your wallet and just passing out your information to everybody around you. So when we go through here, there's going to be some examples of software that you can utilize today after this meeting that'll help protect you and keep your information more secure and light, keep your wallet zipped up tight. So tips for protection. We've got antivirus, anti-spyware, anti-malware. There's a new virus going around, and we even heard somebody talk about this earlier today where there's anti-ransomware, where it's similar to a virus, but instead of hurting your system, it holds your system hostage until you actually pay for the software to remove it. When you're looking for this type of stuff, you want to make sure that you go with a reputable brand and something that may be recommended to others. not just what the department guy or the guy in the department store tells you is on sale. So if you go into Walmart, you ask the guy at Walmart, what's a good antivirus? And he goes, well, we've got this one on sale, and it's some ABC antivirus that you personally haven't heard of. I wouldn't jump on it right then and there. Do some research. This is where Google will be your best friend. If you go home, before you buy any kind of antivirus, go home and make sure it's actually a reputable brand. There's plenty of other kinds out there, but there's a lot of them that are fly-by-night. So you may buy it today, and tomorrow they've went out of business, and you can no longer get updates. So then the ones that you want to make sure is that they consistently update your system, that they update it automatically, that you don't have to go down and download the latest update. Kind of like when you grab your iPhone and you plug your iPhone in and it asks you if you want to update. It's okay, but how many people actually cancel past that? You want one that actually updates it automatically. So when you do your research, just make sure a reputable brand and something that you can research quickly. You don't have to spend a day or a week on trying to figure it out. Just spend a couple minutes to find out if you can find good or bad information about it. Obviously, good information is the best one that you want to go with. You want to create strong passwords. So strong passwords kind of encompasses the length of the password. You want to make sure that you use a longer password. If your password's only 4 characters, if it's only 6 characters, the shorter the password, the easier it is to hack. The longer the password, the harder it is. You want to make sure it's complex. So don't put in, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you may be a long enough password, but it's also an easy phrase to guess. So you want to mix it up a little bit. And to be able to increase the complexity of your password, you want to do character variation. So when I talk about character variation, it means add numbers, symbols, capital letters, uncapital letters, and vary those throughout your password. You'll find that there's ways to do character variation. So if you type in, and we'll take what's on the screen, we have the word password on the screen. So if I wanted to make that a harder word, but also still maintain the word password, I could make it a capital P and leave A. Instead of the S's, put $. So PA, $, W, make it a capital 0, and then RD. So we can make that same password. It still looks like password when I look at it, but now I've increased the complexity of the password through character variation. I've made capital letters, I've inserted special symbols, and I've replaced regular alphanumeric or alphabetic characters with numeric characters, where we've replaced O with a 0. And then you also want to eliminate repetitious password usage. When I say that, a repetitious password is one that we all get in the habit of using the same password. I use the same password, and I fall victim to this too, but I use the same password on a couple different accounts. I do that so I can remember. The best way is to kind of challenge your mind to remember a couple additional passwords. So instead of having just one blanket password and using that on all your accounts, mix it up and have maybe 2 or 3 passwords, and it can be a variation. As right now I use, let's say, 3 different passwords, and I have a variation on the same password. So it in general is a similar password, and then I make a variation upon that to make it a little harder. So in the event that someone does gain one password, they only have access to a small amount of your information rather than every account that you possibly have, because they can only get access to the ones that matches up with. So if you happen to have multiple passwords, then it decreases the likelihood of losing all access. And then you also want to use your virus scanner. Make sure if you're up here, we're going to purchase that virus scanner, and we're going to do that research, but you don't want to just install it and let it just sit there. You want to periodically scan your system. There's plenty of times where you're copying files or you're getting files downloaded from the internet, and periodically you may run across a virus that the virus scanner hasn't been updated yet to detect. In all reality, viruses do come out, obviously, before an actual fix is created to remove it. So periodically you want to run your virus scanner. You can usually do that by just right-clicking on the icon or opening up your virus scanner software that you downloaded through your program menu, and then fire it up and let it scan your complete system. It'll probably take an hour or two, depending on how many files you have, but inevitably it's a good quality assurance check that you can do on a periodic basis to make sure that you're not falling victim to a virus that might have come out before an actual fix was released. Additional tips for protection is buy at reputable businesses. So if you're online, you find a really, really good deal, and I do this activity in my class here where we go online and we shop. We make sure that, you know, we try to find the best prices possible. And as part of that activity that we do around Black Friday, we make sure that we keep important, you know, tips to make sure that you're going to a reputable business. So there's people that you can find the best price, but the best price may not really be for the truth. You may find a one-off website that says you can buy an iPad for $200. Most likely, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. I wouldn't recommend purchasing something from one of those sites. If in doubt and you feel really compelled to take advantage of that, you want to make sure that you go on to Google, research the company name, research the web address, do a quick search, and find out if there's any reviews. Because inevitably, you're not the only one that found that deal. There's plenty of other people out in this world that have run across that same deal. So you just want to make sure that you don't run into the same situation. When you're going onto the web, you want to also make sure that the checkout area, the area that you typically put all your critical username, password, address, credit card information, you want to make sure it's secure. There's a couple of quick telltale signs that you can look at. You've got the security identifier of looking at your website address in the top menu bar and making sure it says HTTPS. If it says HTTPS, it at least tells you you're on a secure web page. But on top of that, you can also look where next to the HTTPS there should be a padlock. And if there's a padlock there, that will help you one step further in identifying that you are in fact on a secure website. Other ones to make sure to validate is if they're utilizing a VeriSign security certificate or an industry standard security certificate to secure their site. You can typically secure your site through other means, but you want to validate whatever security certificate they use, and usually they will place a website link somewhere on their page to tell you if that is a valid, secure website. There's easy ways to fake it, but make sure if in doubt, and in all reality, if it's Amazon or if it's, you know, GoDaddy buying a domain, or if you're on Macy's.com, you can pretty much rest assured once you see the HTTP side or the padlock that their information is secure. But if you're at ABC Company, you read a review, it sounded pretty good, and if you're at ABC Company and you're trying to get that $200 iPad, you want to do a little extra research just to make sure that it is in fact a credible, secure site, because you don't want to put your information in, hit that send button, and have some, you know, college dorm student running a packet sniffer watch all your information go across the network and grab all your credit card information. On top of this, you don't want to randomly click on pop-ups or install software. So if you're on the internet, you found a program that you like, if it's not something like Microsoft Office, or if it's on an iffy website, you want to make sure that you do a little bit of research, because along with installing that software typically will come additional little friends, I guess you can say. And those friends like to tag on and make your computer go slow. Sometimes there may be a keylogger, which in terms of a keylogger will monitor everything that you type on your computer and save it to a file and send it across the internet, depending on how it's been designed. And you can run into quite a few instances in this point. So it's best to limit how much software and how many pop-ups you click on. And I like to say the example is, if a pop-up window shows up on your computer and says you have a virus, you probably don't yet. But as soon as you click on that, I would guarantee you that you will end up with a virus or some sort of ransomware or spyware or malware, because most antiviruses will pop up with a familiar pop-up down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, or it will say, you know, I have McAfee antivirus, or I have Norton antivirus, or I have AVG antivirus. A window will be identified and properly identify the software that you've personally installed. Now, if you happen to receive something totally different with a total different name of a virus scanner that you've never installed on your computer, close the window down or reboot your computer immediately, whatever you feel comfortable with about removing that window from your screen. But don't click and say yes, install, and fix this virus, because once you do that, you've pretty much infected your computer. And you know, in all reality, it saves you a costly bill from going to a computer squad to have that repaired. We want to get more secure. The whole principle is we've kind of discussed ways to avoid running into situations, but we also want to get more secure. So we've installed our software, but we also want to take advantage of better hardware. Usually it's less targeted to try to hack hardware devices on your network. So we've got things like a router with a firewall. Most people have a router at their house, and making sure that that router is not completely outdated. You could have a router from the year 2000. It still work perfectly fine today. The only problem is there's been plenty of advances since then in terms of encryption, firewalls, intrusion detection, that you would want to buy a newer router that includes some of those features. The more secure features in your router that you have running your network at home or at work will keep your business that much more secure. If you happen to have a wireless encryption or wireless network at home or at work, you want to make sure it's encrypted. There's a couple different layers of encryption. There's WEP, there's WPA, there's WPA2, and you want to select the one that's the most secure. Usually when I say most secure, it's harder for a hacker to get into your wireless network then. It's not going to totally prevent it, because if they know what they're doing and they want to spend the time, they can still get into your wireless network. But going with something like WPA2 will keep that a little more secure than what it already is. And if there's no encryption at all on your network, then what that runs into is someone could drive down the street, sit a couple blocks or a block down the road, hop on your network, and you would never know that they're on your wireless network watching all your information going across your network. You want to encrypt your laptop hard drive. If you happen to have a laptop, you carry it around a lot, and you have some really, really important information that you would not like anybody to have access to, you want to encrypt that laptop. What that does is it basically mixes up the information on it, puts a password on there, and if you don't have that password, you can't gain access to the hard drive. And it's not just like putting a password on it and that's it. To this level, it's even if you crack the password, you can, which is fairly almost impossible to do, then it would be difficult to gain access. Like most of the time you could say, well, it's got a password, I'll just plug it into another computer and use my other operating system to gain access to it. But when you've encrypted a hard drive, at the level it's been encrypted, by doing something like that, you still can't gain access to the information. and you can encrypt not only your laptop hard drive, but you can encrypt portable hard drives, flash drives, something that if you happen to bring to school on a daily basis, and you would worry if someone got a hold of the information, maybe you save your tax files to it, then you would definitely want to make sure you encrypt your hard drive. And we'll go into, at the end of the presentation, I have a open sourced encryption software that you can utilize that will help take care of this and really become no cost to you to be able to implement. And when you want to buy a new system, to be more secure and utilize that additional hardware to buy a new system, you can go in and use something or purchase something that has facial or fingerprint authentication. It first started out, and you can get older systems even, back into around, probably about 10 years old now, where they've implemented computers and laptops that had fingerprint authentication. This has continued to evolve, and more manufacturers have picked up on this. But now, manufacturers also have facial authentication. So if you go to get access to your computer, it'll recognize your facial outlay and then go ahead and allow you to authenticate to your computer. It does it at a couple different levels. It can do it as a hardware level once you turn your machine on. It requires authentication. And it can also do it at an operating system level, which is not as secure. So when you look at this, if you're doing a lot of research, and this is definitely something that you're concerned about, make sure that you look at it at a hardware level, because at a hardware level, it'll protect your system that much further. So I want to secure my operating system. So we talked about operating systems and how they're not generally easily secured. Well, we can rest assured that there's various operating systems that can be stated as being more secure than others. And we'll hear typically where the Mac operating system is much more secure than Windows. If you've heard of Linux, which is basically the top three, are Mac operating system, Windows, and Linux, we'll typically hear that Mac operating system is really secure, or if you're familiar with Linux, Linux is more secure than Windows. And in all reality, not one operating system is secure or more secure than the other. It's just people are less individuals write viruses and code against Mac and Linux. Windows has been out there and more popular and has kind of had a bad connotation with it for so long that people have generally tried to write more malware and viruses against it. We'll see as Mac operating system, Macs actually take a larger piece in the marketplace, that we've started to see a little bit of a virus coming through. So what we'll want to do is, as we go through the Mac operating system and the Linux and Windows operating system, we'll see a change over time, over maybe 5 years, and most likely sooner, where people will start writing more viruses against the Mac operating system. Usually the operating system that becomes the majority is the one that hackers and people tend to write viruses against. Linux, you may actually find out Linux has never been completely mainstream. So at that level, they may never actually have the attention towards identity or malware or viruses that Windows has ever gotten. But inevitably, there's still occasionally a virus that may come around. But the two that you would say that could be potentially the same, with Windows still being a little higher at the moment, would be Windows and the Mac operating system. So, you know, what this changes, and I kind of have this stated on the slide where this percentage will change every day, and it all really falls into what becomes mainstream. As we see market share progress in the Mac industry, we'll also see more attention given to that, where there may be a need for an antivirus software. So we've got the selection process, and we've talked about this a couple different times. We talked about going with a reputable and recommended brand, not just something you've heard in passing that was a good deal. You also want to make sure that you've looked up reviews and have Google as your best friend. Google is a quick way to look up reviews and figure out what may be going on. And then when in doubt, don't just try it out. If you can't find any information, I would say the last thing you want to do is just go ahead and buy it and stick it on your computer. That's usually the worst case scenario, because if you're just tossing it on that computer and you haven't found any information about the virus scanner or the hardware that you're purchasing, some of those can actually be viruses in itself or a disguise as adware or malware. So make sure that you take enough time to research this and do a little bit of research. The research process is not very hard, but go through and research everything out to make sure that it's something reputable. If you can't find anything, I would say give up on that as a selection and start looking for something else. And then in all reality, after we've done all of this, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's inevitable. We'll never avoid all of this, but we want to make sure that we keep our data backed up. Why to back it up is it's inevitably you can still, after working through everything, you can still run into a virus potentially. You know, you're going to greatly lessen it, so it's not like you're going to run into a virus every day. But inevitably you're going to come home one day, or maybe never, and find you've gotten a virus, or worst case, your hard drive's crashed on your computer and you've lost all your data. So you want to make sure that you keep it backed up. There's quite a few different ways to back it up. You can use a USB key or a flash drive or an external USB hard drive. You can burn it to CD, or you can put it up on a cloud drive, something similar to a Google Drive or Microsoft SkyDrive or Dropbox.com, as a means of keeping all your data backed up. You know, what should you back up? Well, I would say financial data, pictures, I commonly hear that, personal documents, and really anything that's personally important to you. And basically the thought process is that if my PC were gone, if I walked in and let's say someone broke into my house and stole my computer, what would I miss the most off that computer? You know, in general, don't say Microsoft Office. That can always be restored. Applications can always be brought back. But things that cannot be brought back are the one things that you want to back up the most. So if you've written a manuscript or you're writing a book, or you've got all your family photos on your computer and you don't have it anywhere else, and I've commonly seen this where people's family photos and as myself are the most important. So if they're the most important and there's only one place you have those housed, you want to make sure that you back those up somewhere. And then we want to flip over to which devices are more secure. So we talked about secure software, but we want to see which devices are more secure. So you can think of mobile devices being more secure because less people are writing viruses against that iPad, that Android phone, or the iPhone, or any kind of tablet or phone. They're more secure in that standpoint, but the only problem is they're at a higher risk of being stolen. So in those instances, you still have a means to back those up. We've got for iDevices like iPhone and iPad, you can use the iCloud, which will keep a backup of your data, and Google Drive and using Google Plus on your Android devices help back that information up. So you want to make sure you take advantage of those automated backup services. Your laptops are typically the next highest. They fall in the next highest not because their operating system is less secure, but more so that they're still at a higher risk than a desktop of being stolen. A lot of corporate information that has been lost or had reported being stolen in the past had been typically on a laptop. And then third, your desktops, usually the big clunky thing in your bedroom or in your office. A lot of people don't typically want to take off with those. They're too hard, they're too heavy, and probably more more at risk of viruses and computer hackers gaining access to them than actually having a physical theft occurrence. When it comes into comparisons of a virus themselves, desktops and laptops will be equal. They're the kind of the hot spot for obtaining access and gaining access to your information. We would at some point probably see a increase in mobile device hacking occurring, but at the moment, at least the two main items that you would be more interested in securing would be your desktop and your laptop. Then also you want to keep in mind that anything that's on a network is typically at risk of being able to be hacked. So we've got going out to your Starbucks network and sitting there plugging in your account information and checking out your account balance and your bank account. Because you're on a public network, you can still potentially run the risk of sending that information across the network encrypted or unencrypted. The problem, or the good thing nowadays, is that banks are required to mandatorily encrypt that information, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But just keep in mind that if you're not at your home network, you've spent all the time securing your home network, the visiting networks you're on may not have taken that much care into securing their network. So you may want to take a little bit higher precedence ensuring that your information is secure on your own laptop to at least prevent any issues on I guess you could say, as vacation type networks. You know, why are devices safe? Mobile devices tend to be safer because less people write viruses for them. You know, it all comes down to, even though they're quite popular, writing a virus can be still as easy, but the way we have mobile devices set up nowadays going through a app store mechanism is there's now an approval process by the owner of the operating system. So when you go to write an application for an iPhone or an Android device, they have to go through Google and Apple and go through an approval process and a quality assurance check to make sure that there is no viruses and there is no bad code in them in the first place. You know, inevitably some go through, but for the most part, quite a few of them are deterred, and that's what limits the risk of viruses. You know, desktops and laptops are obviously an easier target because you can run into pop-ups. There can be remote code execution. Basically, what you can run into is a virus that would ultimately be given to you through almost like a step that you haven't even recognized of your own. So keep in mind those are kind of the two categories that we fall into. And to wrap up, we really have a few free tools that you can utilize. When we look at Avast and Trend Micro House Call, Microsoft Security Essentials, those websites are going to give you some antivirus protection. I would also throw in AVG, which is a personal one that I've used quite a bit, that all free tools that will help protect your system from viruses and malware. If you're looking at more of a firewall, if you look at Zone Alarm, it's a great firewall that you can install on your system that's better than the Microsoft one that comes with the Windows operating system. And then also Malwarebytes is a great application that if you do happen to be infected, or they have a preventative tool that will run in the background on your computer to prevent malware from getting on your computer. So having a couple or a combination of these tools is a really good way to make sure that you don't run into any issues along the way. Some get updated faster than others, so if you have Avast and Malwarebytes and Zone Alarm on your computer, you should be good. Just keep in mind, only install one antivirus software. So when it comes to Avast, Trend Micro, AVG, Microsoft Security Essentials, having one is perfectly fine. Putting more than one in can actually cause issues and cause your machine to slow down because the antivirus software almost fights against one of them. The last set of tools are more for personal use to kind of increase your ability. So if you want to dive in a little deeper and start fixing some of these problems for others, you can use tools like the Ultimate Boot CD, which will give you a bootable CD-ROM in case the machine has been compromised, that allow you to get into a system and repair some of the virus damage, and quite a few other tools that you'll find helpful. We have Snort, which is an intrusion detection system that's open sourced and totally free, that you can check or monitor networks to make sure that there's no at-risk areas. TrueCrypt, we talked about hard drive encryption and encrypting your desktop hard drive, laptop hard drive, and so forth. TrueCrypt's an open source, totally free disk encryption software that's been around for quite a while, and it's definitely a great one to take advantage of. And then we've got Backtrack, which falls in line with the way the Ultimate Boot CD functions. It's a bootable disk of security prevention and penetration testing tools that will make sure that you've checked out your network or any other network that you may be on. In closing, just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today for this real quick webinar on security. I know it's can be quite a bit of an interesting topic, so if you find yourself compelled to take advantage and learn more, obviously feel free to contact us at Rasmussen College to follow up on different ways that you can take advantage and gain additional knowledge in the realm of network security. Again, I thank you, and I will open it up for any questions that anybody may have.